So you mentioned imposter syndrome and this idea of having to fend it off on an ongoing basis. Have you come to terms with that now? Do you still get imposter syndrome?
Yes, I think it's now, I would see it as just normal and human. And as I've started to understand it more, it serves me a benefit as well as being kind of there always, which is, you know, are we doing a good enough job? Am I doing a good enough job? Could I be doing better? That can obviously have negative implications because it creates worry. But I've learned to look at the positives of it, which is it always motivates me to want to do better and to do more. And some might say, well, okay, that might not give you much fulfillment. And if you're always looking for more, will you be happy? But I think that there's as with anything, you know, trying to find happiness in a startup environment is always 50 different shades of grey, and there will always be things that you absolutely love doing. And the reality of you have to be doing 100% of what you love all the time is not realistic. I think it's easy to have like that, you know, quote porn on Twitter saying, you know, you need to be absolutely 100% loving what you do every single second of the day. But when you're looking over your VAT return, which you have to do, who's going to find that fun? But it's necessary. So you have to be realistic about these things. And I think with imposter syndrome, I've got better at it. Obviously, having been through some small, you know, wins over the last 10 years have helped the imposter syndrome, but it's healthy. It's healthy to challenge yourself. And at the end of the day, it just means that I'm always being retrospective and thinking, did I do the right thing? Am I currently doing the right thing? And then what could I change about what I'm currently doing to make tomorrow better?
Yeah, I really like that. I resonate a lot with the imposter syndrome comments. And so in my case, I got to a place recently where I was like, you know what? There's no imposter syndrome here. I'm good. I know what I've done. I can look at the objectives, and the objectives are that we've built a brilliant team out of thin air. We've never raised cash. We're at, you know, over 1 mil ARR now. And, you know, looking forward, the hopes are really kind of bright. But then, and it was literally today, had a chat with one of our advisors, and they always kind of prompt me to think bigger, to think better, and to push myself. And there was one comment which really just put me back a little bit mentally, and I was like, oh no, there's no way. I kind of just wrote it off straight away. And at the time, you know, the reason I did that was because there are levels to how big you want to go. And when I say something is big, it's big. If I say something is like mental, it's a lot bigger. If I say something is just straight up stupid, then it's like, there's no point even considering it because it's too big. And it was one of those things. It was like, no, that's stupid. But now on reflection, I'm like, I literally just wrote off an idea because I thought it was at a level which I couldn't even get close to. But I haven't actually considered the idea at all. I haven't given it any thought. And because it's slightly different to, you know, what the current plan is, I just wrote it off and thought, no, that's not me. It could never be me. But actually on reflection, it's like, that's imposter syndrome.
I wonder, having heard about that, I wonder whether you wrote it off straight away because you also felt challenged. Maybe it was the fact that someone challenged you to think bigger and you hadn't thought bigger as of yet. And you know, I've had that happen to me in situations before where our investors have said, why are you not moving faster? You need to be moving 10 times faster. And I've used an excuse. Oh, there's a reason why we can't do that because this team has got this much going on and that person has that much going on. And then when I really think about it, that was it was a response to what I saw was an attack from someone going, you're not doing well enough. And actually, objectively, could I have moved faster? Probably. And was I making an excuse? Probably. But was I protecting myself? Maybe I was protecting myself. And that's what is also quite difficult. You really have to separate out the emotion of what's being said and the actual reality of, is what they're saying, does it hold any water? And that's what I've also had to kind of learn over time.
I think that's bang on. I think it was a defense from me. I was like, whoa, I feel challenged. I am challenged. And there have been other parts like that with the same advisor in the past. And then he kind of just watches me just make up excuses. And he just smiles. He's like, okay. And then just silence. And I'm like, oh God, all right, fine. Let's flesh this out a bit. And then eventually I figure out what it is.
I found that actually the role of a founder, CEO, even as an investor as well, you almost play a coach / therapist role in a lot of scenarios. You ask people questions, but most of the time they're just self-reflective questions. And most of the time people do know the answer to their own questions, but they'll come up with reasons as to why it's not the reality. But deep down, you know, most people who are in touch with who they are and what they know underneath do know the real reasons as to why they do what they do. So I found that actually I'm probably less of a, dictator CEO than maybe I used to be. And maybe that wasn't a good thing back then. And I hope that I've learned to become more of a listener CEO, someone that asks the right questions whilst also having opinions. But definitely now as the team started to grow with Mind Labs, we're trying to grow this business in a different way, which means that we have to give responsibility over. And that has been hard at times where I'm not used to it. And that's, again, a challenge for myself. How much can I hand the reins back over to people that are more experienced and people that have got expertise? And that is my next that's the next learning that I have to do for myself.
Yeah, I think it's really good to have that level of self-awareness about what your leadership style is, how it's changed, and also what's needed for the business if you want to move at the pace that you do want to move at. I was similar at the start of WoW, so 4 years ago. It just wasn't pleasant to work with. I thought my way was the only way and it had to be like that, and it just wasn't pleasant. And I got feedback from the team. I learned from some of our clients who I did it in a really good way. And then more recently got feedback from our other advisor, Craig Fenton, and he basically said what you've just said there, right? It's about asking the right questions because a lot of the time people have the answers. So then I went full extreme to that way. And then very recently a colleague was asking me something and I was kind of asking questions back. I could see it just got a bit annoying and I was like, do you want an answer from me? I can give you an answer. I'm trying to help you think, but I can also just give you an answer. And they were just like, yeah, I'd appreciate an answer. And I was like, cool, do this. So it's like also learning when you need to kind of ask the questions and also when something is a little bit more time sensitive and urgent and you need to just give the answer and then.
Yeah, that goes back to my point around, 50 shades of color. There is no definitive right or wrong answer for leadership. Leadership, you do a bit of this and a bit of that. Sometimes you have to be, firm, authoritative and give an answer because there are people that just need a direction. Other times you let people find that direction themselves. And there's just maybe that's what I've found having consumed basically the whole of startup Twitter, is there is still no right answer. It doesn't exist. You work to how you are as a person and how your team are as people. And because everyone is different, that means there is no rule book, and you can read like Amp It Up and you can read The Hard Thing About Hard Things and you can read 0 to 1. They work very well for those people, but they might not necessarily work for you. And that's the learning experience. You have to find what works for you. Otherwise, you'll always be comparing yourself to someone else.